Welcome everybody. I'm here to teach you how to make my family recipe of sauerkraut and potato flakes. Prep time's about 30 minutes, cooking time's about 2 hours, but it's well worth it if you ask me. And it'll yield you about 30 to 35 potato flakes, and depending on the size of your pork roast or pork loin, should give you about 10 to 20 servings there of the roast or pork loin. Now the items you'll need today is a large frying pan, 2 large pots that'll hold about 10 pounds of potatoes, or 2 smaller pots that hold 5 pounds each. A large bowl to mix everything in, a large fork or potato masher, a baking sheet, a pan or something to put your potato flakes in afterwards, and a grate. Ingredients is you'll need 10 pounds of potatoes, 3 packs of bacon, 16 slices of bread. Now you can use any kind of bread, even the cheap brand, doesn't really matter. 2 to 4 pounds of pork roast or pork loin, 2.5 gallons of water, 2 20-ounce bags of sauerkraut, or you can get the canned, 2 to 3 eggs, salt to taste, and flour. So your first step is you want to do the night before is you're going to want to put your bread on 2 separate baking sheets, 9 pieces on one and 7 pieces on the other. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take the 9 pieces on the baking sheet and you're going to want to cube those up. So cut them up into, smaller cubes. You don't want them too big, not too small. And then place them back on the baking sheet, and you're going to throw both of those sheets in the oven on its lowest setting and just leave them overnight. And then in the morning, when you get up, just take them out. They should be dry and not toasted, kind of crunchy. But you'll take the 7 pieces of bread and you'll want to grate those into a fine breadcrumbs. Now, if you don't have a grate, you can just throw them in a bag and go to town with a hammer or mallet, whatever, just as long as it comes out in fine breadcrumbs. So basically you should end up with breadcrumbs and croutons, basically. Now, this here is about the size of the pork loin that we usually use. We have used pork roast or pork loin, doesn't really matter. You just want a nice pork product, a loin or a roast to boil, because basically what we're looking for is a nice pork broth. So basically, step 4, you're going to take your 2.5 gallons of water. You're going to throw it in that large pot of yours. If you don't have that, you can separate it into 2 smaller ones and just cut your pork loin in half and cook them in that. Now once that's done, take your pork loin out of the broth, put it in the oven to keep it warm, because that part of it's pretty much done. Next, you'll want to wash your potatoes and then throw them in your large pot or 2 smaller pots and fill it up above the potatoes, about 2.5 or about 1 to 2 inches above the potatoes. Put that on high, let them boil until they're nice and done. Just make sure you don't overboil them. This is pretty much what they should look like when they're done, and you want to drain those really well. Now, if you did use your big pot, you took your broth out to use your big pot for the potatoes, you want to take your potatoes out and add your pork broth back to that large pot, because we're going to need that for later. And also, if the skins are cracked, don't worry about that. That's normal. Step 6, you can do this one while the potatoes are cooking. You want to take all 3 packs of your bacon and you want to cut them up into cubes or smaller pieces, as you see here in the picture. And of course, you're going to want to go ahead and fry that up until they are nice and crispy. Now, if you know bacon, you can't really tell it's crispy until it sits out and kind of dries and gets crispy. So until they're nice and done, and make sure you don't drain the grease, because we're going to need that for our next step, which is, in fact, you're going to take the bread cubes that you dried out overnight, and you're going to add that to the bacon mixture or the cooked bacon and the grease. Leave that on the stove for about a minute, and then you can take it off the heat and just let it set to the side, because you want all those breadcrumbs to really absorb all that grease, that bacony goodness, because that's what's going to give our potato flakes a lot of its bacon flavor. Next, as you see here, you just turn off the heat, set the bacon to the side, and let those bread cubes really absorb that delicious bacon grease flavor. as you see here. And we're going to use that later in, I think, step 9. Anyway, return back to the potatoes. Now what you're going to want to do is you're going to peel them. You can use a knife or a spoon. It just makes it easier to grab the skins because they can be a little hard to grab onto, and it should peel off real nice and easily. But be careful because the potatoes will be hot. You can let them cool, but don't let them cool down too much because then they won't mash right. And as here, once you peel a potato, put it on a plate, mash it with the masher or with a fork. Now what we're looking for here is like a chunky consistency, not too chunky, but you definitely don't want like smooth mashed potato because then it won't work right. And once you get all your potatoes mashed, throw it in the mixing bowl, add 3 eggs, your salt and pepper to taste. And then after that, you're going to add your bacon mix with the bread cubes and the bacon and the grease, and then add your breadcrumbs. And then next comes the fun part. You get to get your hands dirty. But don't forget to wash your hands. Nobody wants dirty hands in their potato cakes. As you see here, don't forget to wash your hands. Now just get in there with your hands, mix it all together as well as you can until it's all nice and mixed like that. And then once that's done, add about half a cup to 2/3 cup of flour to it and mix that in because that's going to help your potato flakes stick together in a ball. Now once you've rolled out your balls, roll it in some flour, get your broth to a nice simmer, add a package of sauerkraut. You can add a little more if you think it needs it, but then put your potato flakes down into that easily, cook it for about 15 minutes. For each batch, I'd say do about 10 potato flakes each batch, cook them for 15 minutes, and then you can take them out, put them in your pan. And then to finish it off, drizzle it with some of your broth and sauerkraut and serve it with your pork roast or pork loin and enjoy. Now this does take a while and it's usually made for larger family functions, but believe me, it is worth it. You can do smaller batches, just, work with the ingredients, put them down a little bit. But anyway, thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed. Bye.